You look calm on the outside. You show up, you smile. You meet deadlines. People call you responsible, driven, even put together. But inside, your mind never stops racing. Your chest feels tight for no clear reason, and no matter how much you achieve, it never feels like enough. If that sounds familiar, you might be dealing with something many people quietly carry: high-functioning anxiety. You might not realize this, but anxiety doesn't always look like panic attacks or obvious breakdowns. Sometimes it hides behind success. Sometimes it wears the mask of productivity, and sometimes it gets praised. High-functioning anxiety isn't a formal diagnosis, but it's a term many psychologists use to describe people who appear capable and accomplished on the outside, while internally struggling with persistent worry, tension, and self-doubt. Here's what psychology says. Anxiety is not just fear. It's a constant sense that something could go wrong, even when everything looks fine. So let's gently explore 7 signs you might have high-functioning anxiety. And as we do, notice what resonates. You don't have to label yourself. You don't have to judge yourself. Just listen with curiosity. The first sign is that you're highly productive, but rarely at peace. You're the person who finishes tasks early. You double-check emails 3 times before sending them. You stay late, volunteer for extra work, and feel uncomfortable when you're not doing something useful. On the surface, it looks like ambition, and maybe part of it is. But underneath, there's often a quiet fear driving it. What if I mess up? What if they think I'm not good enough? What if I fall behind? Studies suggest that people with anxiety often use productivity as a coping mechanism. Staying busy becomes a way to avoid sitting with uncomfortable thoughts. When you're constantly moving, you don't have to feel the fear. But here's the exhausting part. Even after you finish everything, your body doesn't relax. You immediately look for the next thing to fix, improve, or prepare for. Rest feels unnatural, sometimes even unsafe. You might not realize this, but your nervous system may be stuck in a low-level fight-or-flight mode. It's like your brain believes there's always a tiger nearby, even if that tiger is just an unanswered message. The second sign is overthinking everything. You replay conversations in your head at night. You analyze your tone. You wonder if that pause in the meeting meant something. You imagine worst-case scenarios for things that haven't even happened. You might lie in bed thinking, "Why did I say that?" Or "What if they misunderstood me?" Here's what psychology says. Anxiety thrives on uncertainty. The brain tries to solve it by thinking more. But the more you think, the more possibilities you create, and many of those possibilities are negative. Overthinking can feel like you are being responsible, like you're preparing. But often, it's your mind trying to gain control over what it can't fully control. And the hardest part, even when people reassure you, it only helps for a moment. Then your mind finds a new angle to worry about. The third sign is that you struggle to say no. You take on extra responsibilities even when you're overwhelmed. You agree to plans when you're exhausted. You respond to messages immediately because you don't want anyone to feel ignored. On the outside, this looks like kindness, reliability, generosity, and you probably are those things. But you might not realize this. Sometimes it's also fear. Fear of disappointing someone. Fear of being seen as lazy. Fear of losing approval. Studies suggest that people with anxiety often develop strong people-pleasing tendencies. If everyone is happy with you, then maybe nothing will go wrong. Maybe you'll stay safe. But over time, this creates quiet resentment, not toward others necessarily, but toward yourself, because you keep abandoning your own limits. The fourth sign is constant self-criticism. You achieve something big, and your first thought isn't pride, it's relief. Okay, I didn't fail. You brush off compliments. You focus on small mistakes no one else noticed. You compare yourself to people who seem more confident, more talented, more ahead. Here's what psychology says. Anxiety often pairs with a harsh inner voice. This voice believes that if it pushes you hard enough, you'll avoid failure. It thinks criticism equals protection, but that inner critic doesn't know when to stop. Even when others see your strengths clearly, you may struggle to feel them. You might secretly believe that you're one mistake away from being exposed as not good enough, and that's heavy to carry alone. The fifth sign is physical tension that never fully goes away. You clench your jaw without noticing. Your shoulders are tight. Your stomach feels unsettled before meetings or social events. You get headaches, muscle aches, or feel fatigued even after sleeping. You might tell yourself, I'm just tired, or I just need coffee. But you might not realize this. Anxiety lives in the body when your brain senses threat. Even subtle social or performance threats. It sends signals through your nervous system. Your heart rate shifts, your muscles prepare to act. Stress hormones circulate. If this happens occasionally, your body resets. But when it happens daily, your body forgets how to fully relax. That constant hum of tension becomes your normal. The sixth sign is difficulty enjoying the present moment. You finally go on vacation and spend the first 2 days checking emails in your head. You're at dinner with friends, but thinking about tomorrow's tasks. You achieve a goal and immediately start worrying about the next one. Studies suggest that anxiety pulls attention into the future. It asks, what's next? What could go wrong? How do we prepare? But when your mind lives in the future, it steals from the present. And sometimes you feel guilty for not being happier. You think other people would love this. Why can't I just relax? If you felt that, you're not ungrateful. Your nervous system might simply be wired for vigilance. The seventh sign is that people are surprised when you say you're struggling. When you open up about feeling anxious, someone might say, but you're doing so well, or you seem so confident, and that can make you feel even more alone, because your external success becomes proof that you shouldn't feel this way. You might not realize this, but high-functioning anxiety often hides behind competence. The world rewards your output. It doesn't always see your internal cost. So you learn to keep going, to keep performing, to keep smiling. And inside, you quietly wonder why it feels so hard. Now here's the deeper insight. For many people, high-functioning anxiety didn't start randomly. It often has roots. Maybe you grew up in an environment where mistakes were criticized heavily. Maybe love felt conditional on achievement. Maybe you learned early that being responsible kept things stable. So your brain adapted. It said, okay, we'll stay alert. We'll anticipate problems. We'll work harder than everyone else. That way, we'll be safe. And in many ways, that strategy worked. It helped you succeed. It helped you avoid conflict. It helped you survive difficult seasons. But strategies that protect you in one chapter of life can exhaust you in another. You might not realize this, but your anxiety could be a younger version of you still trying to keep everything together. When you see it that way, something shifts. Instead of asking, what's wrong with me? You can ask, what was this trying to protect me from? Here's what psychology says. Healing often begins with compassion, not criticism. If you've recognized yourself in these signs, that doesn't mean something is broken. It means your nervous system has been working overtime, and you deserve rest. Now, let's gently talk about what can help. Not in a fix-yourself-immediately way, not in a pressure-filled way, just small shifts. First, begin noticing your inner dialogue. When that critical voice shows up, try adding one sentence after it. Instead of, I'm so stupid for making that mistake, add, I'm allowed to be human. It might feel unnatural at first, but studies suggest that self-compassion reduces anxiety more effectively than harsh self-judgment. Second, practice tiny moments of intentional pause, not an hour-long meditation, just 30 seconds. Before opening a new task, take one slow breath. Notice your shoulders. Unclench your jaw. Let your body feel the chair beneath you. You might not realize this, but safety is something your body has to experience, not just think about. Third, experiment with gentle boundaries. The next time you want to say yes but feel overwhelmed, try saying, let me check my schedule and get back to you. That pause gives you choice. High-functioning anxiety often thrives on automatic yeses. Boundaries retrain your brain to believe that your needs matter too. Fourth, redefine productivity. Ask yourself, if I wasn't afraid, would I still be pushing this hard? There's nothing wrong with ambition, but when it's fueled purely by fear, it drains rather than fulfills. Fifth, consider talking to someone you trust about how you really feel. And if your anxiety feels overwhelming, persistent, or starts interfering with your health or relationships, reaching out to a mental health professional can be incredibly supportive. This video isn't meant to diagnose anything or replace therapy. It's just a starting point for awareness. You don't have to handle this alone. Remember, high-functioning anxiety can be tricky because it convinces you that you're fine, that you're managing, that asking for help would be dramatic. But here's something important. Struggling silently doesn't make you strong. It makes you tired. You deserve a life that feels calm on the inside, too. Imagine waking up without that immediate rush of thoughts. Imagine achieving something and actually feeling proud. Imagine resting without guilt. That's not laziness. That's balance. And balance is learnable. It doesn't happen overnight. Your brain has practiced vigilance for years. But brains are adaptable. That's one of the most hopeful things psychology teaches us. With repeated experiences of safety, boundaries, and self-compassion, your nervous system can slowly recalibrate. You might still be driven. You might still care deeply. You might still plan ahead. But it won't feel like you're running from an invisible threat. If you've been functioning at a high level while quietly battling anxiety, take a moment right now. Notice that you've made it this far. Notice your resilience. Notice how hard you've been trying. And maybe, just maybe, allow yourself a little softness. You don't have to earn rest. You don't have to earn kindness. You don't have to earn the right to breathe deeply. If this resonated with you, you're not alone. And even if no one has ever seen how hard it's been for you, that doesn't mean it hasn't been hard. Sometimes high-functioning anxiety feels like living two lives at once. There's the version of you the world sees, capable, organized, dependable. And then there's the private version of you, the one who lies awake replaying the day, who feels a wave of dread before simple tasks, who constantly wonders if everything is about to fall apart. Holding both of those versions can be exhausting. You might not realize this, but when anxiety becomes your normal state, calm can actually feel uncomfortable. When things are quiet, your brain searches for a problem. When everything is going smoothly, you brace yourself for impact. It's not because you're negative. It's because your nervous system learned that staying prepared equals staying safe. Here's what psychology says. The brain is wired to detect threats more strongly than safety. This is called negativity bias. From an evolutionary perspective, it kept our ancestors alive. But in modern life, where most threats are social or performance-based rather than physical, that same system can turn against us. An unanswered email feels like danger. A neutral facial expression feels like rejection. A small mistake feels like catastrophe. And because you're high-functioning, you respond to that perceived danger by doing more, fixing more, planning more. But what rarely gets addressed is the emotional cost. You may feel disconnected from your own needs. You may struggle to identify what you actually want, because so much of your energy goes into preventing what you don't want. There's a subtle difference there. Living to avoid failure is very different from living to pursue meaning. To pursue meaning, to Byambus' point, it can help to gently ask yourself a deeper question. If anxiety wasn't driving me, what would be? Would you still choose the same goals? Would you still say yes to the same commitments? Would you still measure your worth by output? There's no right or wrong answer. This isn't about throwing away your ambition or suddenly becoming carefree. It's about noticing your motivation. Sometimes high-functioning anxiety disguises itself as perfectionism. You tell yourself, I just have high standards, and having standards is healthy. But perfectionism rooted in anxiety doesn't feel inspiring. It feels punishing. You might spend hours refining something that was already good enough. You might delay starting projects because you're afraid they won't be perfect. You might hesitate to share your ideas unless they're flawless. Studies suggest that perfectionism is strongly linked to anxiety and burnout, because when good is never enough, your nervous system never gets the signal to relax. You might not realize this, but constantly raising the bar can be a way to avoid vulnerability. If everything is perfect, maybe no one can criticize you. Maybe no one can reject you. But perfection is an impossible shield. And chasing it often leads to quiet loneliness. Because when you feel like you always have to perform at your best, it's hard to let people see your messy, uncertain human side. Another layer of high-functioning anxiety is difficulty receiving support. When someone offers help, you might say, "It's okay, I've got it," even when you're overwhelmed. Independence can be a strength. But sometimes, refusing support isn't about strength, it's about fear. Fear of burdening others, fear of appearing weak, fear of losing the image of competence you've worked so hard to maintain. You might not realize this, but allowing yourself to be supported can feel more vulnerable than handling everything alone. Yet connection is one of the most powerful regulators of the nervous system. When you share your worries with someone safe, your brain literally reduces its threat response. Studies suggest that social support lowers stress hormones and increases feelings of security. But if you've built your identity around being the strong one, that shift can take time. It's okay if you're not ready to open up fully. Even small steps matter, like saying, "I've actually been feeling a little stressed lately," instead of "I'm fine." That one honest sentence can be the beginning of something healing. Let's also talk about decision-making. If you have high-functioning anxiety, even small decisions can feel heavy. You research extensively. You weigh every option. You imagine all possible outcomes. On the surface, it looks thorough, responsible, but internally, it's draining. Here's what psychology says. Anxiety increases intolerance of uncertainty. Your brain wants guarantees, but life rarely offers them. So you try to create certainty through analysis. Yet no amount of thinking can eliminate every unknown. At some point, healing involves practicing tolerating small uncertainties, choosing a restaurant without reading 50 reviews, sending the message without rereading it 10 times, making a decision and allowing it to be imperfect. These may seem small, but for someone with high-functioning anxiety, they're significant acts of courage, and courage doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like pressing send and not checking for a response immediately. Another sign that often goes unnoticed is irritability. Because are carrying constant internal pressure, small inconveniences can feel disproportionately frustrating. A delayed response, a change of plans, a minor mistake. You might snap and then feel guilty afterwards. You might not realize this, but irritability is often a symptom of an overwhelmed nervous system. When your baseline stress is already high, it takes very little to push you over the edge. This doesn't make you a bad person. It means your system needs relief. Relief doesn't only come from doing more. Sometimes it comes from doing less. And that can be the hardest lesson of all. High-functioning anxiety often whispers, "If you slow down, everything will fall apart." But sometimes slowing down is exactly what prevents falling apart. Rest is not laziness. Boundaries are not selfish. Imperfect effort is not failure. As we near the end of this conversation, it's important to gently acknowledge something. If your anxiety feels overwhelming, if you're experiencing panic attacks, constant dread, or physical symptoms that interfere with your daily life, it may be really helpful to speak with a licensed mental health professional. There's no shame in that. This conversation is here to create awareness and comfort, not to replace real support when you need it. You deserve care that matches the weight you've been carrying. For now, start small. Notice when your body is tense and soften it by just 5%. Notice when your mind spirals and say, "Thank you for trying to protect me." Notice when you're about to overcommit and give yourself permission to pause. You might not realize this, but anxiety often loses power when it's acknowledged gently instead of fought aggressively. Imagine treating yourself the way you treat others, with patience, with encouragement, with understanding. You've likely extended compassion to friends who were struggling. You didn't call them weak. You didn't demand perfection. You can offer that same grace inward. High-functioning anxiety can make you feel like you're constantly running a marathon that no one else sees, but you are allowed to slow your pace. You are allowed to breathe. You are allowed to be human. You are more than your productivity. You are more than your performance. You are more than the voice in your head that says, "Do better." It simply asks you to become kinder to the person you already are. If parts of this felt uncomfortably familiar, take that as information, not as a verdict. Awareness is not a sentence. It's an opening. An opening to choose rest sometimes. An opening to choose self-compassion. An opening to choose support. You've been strong for a long time. Maybe now it's time to also be gentle. If this resonated with you, you're not alone. And if you've been carrying this quietly for years, I want you to hear this clearly. It makes sense that you're tired. High-functioning anxiety often turns life into a constant performance review. Even during moments that are supposed to feel simple, like watching a movie or sitting with family, there's a background process running in your mind. What should I be doing next? Did I forget something? Am I falling behind? You might not realize this, but your brain may have learned to equate stillness with vulnerability. When nothing is happening, it scans for danger. When everything is done, it searches for what's missing. And because you've managed to keep everything together on the outside, people may rarely question whether you're struggling. They see the results. They don't see the cost. Sometimes the cost shows up in subtle ways. You feel emotionally numb after long periods of stress. You struggle to celebrate wins because you're already focused on the next go. You feel guilty when you rest, as if you have to earn your downtime. Here's what psychology says. When stress becomes chronic, your body adapts to it. Stress hormones like cortisol remain elevated longer than they should. Over time, this can impact sleep, digestion, concentration, and mood. But because you're still functioning, you might tell yourself, it's not that bad. That sentence alone keeps so many people stuck. High-functioning anxiety can be particularly confusing because it comes with rewards. You get praise, you get promotions, you get validation for being dependable. So it becomes harder to question the system. If anxiety is what drives your success, letting go of it can feel scary. You might wonder, if I'm not anxious, will I lose my edge? Will I become lazy? Will I stop caring? You might not realize this, but calm and ambition are not opposites. There are people who achieve incredible things without constantly criticizing themselves. There are people who work hard without living in fear of failure. The difference isn't talent. It's the relationship they have with their own thoughts. Anxiety says, you have to do this or else. Healthy motivation says, I want to do this because it matters to me. That shift from fear-based action to value-based action is powerful. It doesn't happen instantly. It happens gradually, through awareness. Start by noticing what truly matters to you outside of performance. What makes you feel alive, not just accomplished? What makes you feel connected, not just impressive? High-functioning anxiety often narrows your focus to outcomes. Healing expands your focus to experience. Another quiet struggle many people with high-functioning anxiety face is difficulty sleeping. Your body may be exhausted, but your mind feels wide awake. The moment your head hits the pillow, your brain replays the day or fast-forwards into tomorrow. You might not realize this, but nighttime removes distractions. And when distractions disappear, unresolved worries become louder. A gentle practice can help here. Before bed, write down 3 things that are on your mind, not to solve them, just to move them from your head to paper. This signals to your brain that it doesn't have to hold everything overnight. And if sleep is still difficult, remind yourself that struggling with it doesn't mean you're broken. It means your system is alert. It's trying to protect you. The key is teaching it, slowly, that protection doesn't always require hypervigilance. Breathing exercises can help. So can light stretching. So can simply placing a hand on your chest and noticing your heartbeat without trying to change it. It may feel small, but small signals of safety repeated consistently can rewire your stress response over time. You might not realize this, but healing anxiety isn't about eliminating it completely. Anxiety is a normal human emotion. It becomes problematic only when it dominates. The goal isn't zero anxiety. The goal is flexibility. Being able to feel nervous before a presentation and still sleep that night. Being able to care about your work without tying it to your worth. Being able to plan for the future without catastrophizing it. Flexibility is freedom. If you've identified with these signs, take a moment to reflect on something important. Your anxiety likely developed for a reason. Maybe you had to grow up quickly. Maybe you were praised mainly for achievement. Maybe mistakes felt unsafe in your past. Maybe unpredictability shaped you. Your mind adapted intelligently, but adaptation doesn't mean permanence. One powerful step toward change is learning to separate your identity from your anxiety. Instead of saying, I am an anxious person, try saying, I experience anxious thoughts. That subtle shift creates space. You are not your racing heart. You are not your overthinking. You are not your productivity. You are a whole person who happens to have a nervous system that learned to be on high alert, and nervous systems can learn new patterns. Therapy, mindfulness practices, journaling, exercise, and supportive relationships are all tools that research has shown can reduce chronic anxiety. You don't have to use all of them. Even choosing one small habit and sticking with it consistently can create noticeable change. If professional support is accessible to you, it can be incredibly helpful. And if it's not, even educating yourself gently, like you're doing right now, is a meaningful step. Remember, this isn't about blaming yourself for being anxious. It's about understanding yourself more deeply. And understanding creates choice. Right now, as you're listening, notice your breathing. Is it shallow? Is it fast? Or is it steady? Without forcing anything, just allow one slower breath. That breath is proof that you can influence your state, even slightly. High-functioning anxiety may have helped you survive, succeed, and stay in control. But you don't have to stay in survival mode forever. You deserve moments of ease. You deserve joy that isn't immediately followed by worry. You deserve to rest without guilt. If the world only sees your competence, let this be a space where your humanity is seen too. You are allowed to struggle and still be strong. You are allowed to be successful and still need support. You are allowed to look okay and not feel okay. And if today is the first time you've considered that your constant busyness might be anxiety in disguise, that awareness is powerful. Be patient with yourself. Change doesn't come from pressure. It comes from understanding. If this resonated with you, you're not alone.